Hello everybody, my name is Gammastera. I'm going to be showing you how to get 100% on DDLC+. So we're going to first start off with the trophies. I'm doing this mostly because the challenges vary slightly from the PC version, and I just want to make sure that the console users know exactly what they're trying to get aside from what the PC version has. So to begin, we have Breakthrough, which is get 100% data collection, which is sadly still bugged on consoles. Then we have Start a New Game, which is just starting a new game. In the DDLC Plus menu, or in the DDLC menu. Then these next four will be involved in getting 20 out of 20 words for each character, which we have Perfect Sayori, Perfect Natsuki, Perfect Yuri, and Perfect Monica. The Monica one is probably by far the easiest because once you get to the end of Act 3, or towards the end of Act 3, Monica will have her own poem game, which will be super easy to do because she has all of the words for her. Then you have Friendship and Literature, which is finishing all of the side stories, which by unlocking each one of them is by picking each one of the girls for the poem game, and it'll just unlock them for you. And then you just have to get through every single one of them, including Together, which is the last one that'll show up after you complete all the others. Then Thank You from Monica, which is just by completing the normal ending. Dan Says Hi is by getting the special ending, which I will go into more depth in another video. And then we have Any percent WR attempts, which is by getting 20 poems, or by completing a poem in 20 words or 20 seconds or less. I'm going to re-say that. Any percent WR attempts is by writing a poem in 20 seconds or less, which is by, you could just go up to one of the poems and just spam it, and then you would get it. She Will Never Be Real, which is listen to a lot of what Monica has to say. This one is also connected to a picture that I'll be talking about later that has where you would have to get to the end of Act 3, and then once Monica gets done with all of her talking, she'll start talking about random stuff. You'd have to listen to 15 of those monologues, at least. And then we have Doki Doki Poetry Slam, which is by spending enough time in the poetry, or in the poem game, for the music to end up looping. Which, if you just sit in it for a couple minutes, that will happen. And then we have Error, which is by going into Pictures, and then picking a random picture. It could be literally any one of your pictures. And then you can just pick it, hit Set Wallpaper, yes, then it will give you the error achievement. Now, once you've done that, you can go ahead and do Ruin Everything, which is just by going through the game normally, because once you delete Monica, I believe after that happens. Then you have No, which is choose not to quit DDLC, which means you go into DDLC. And now you would hit exit, but instead of hitting yes, you just hit no. So, and then once you hit no, it will give you that achievement. Next, we have Buy My Mixtape, which is going into music, and then listening to music for 20 minutes. Then we have Stonks, which is review Paula's project plan, which you would just have to do a slight bit of the file a slight bit of the file. Oh boy, a slight bit of the file combination clock time stuff. Then once, so like as you can see here, or I'll go back and actually explain what I'm doing. And you go into internal in the game files, then you go to backup, and you go into system, and you go all the way down here to tower keys. It'll be the very last file. And you open that, and then this key pair number 1 gear, you would just have to change your system time to 2:40. It could be AM or PM, and then you would go backwards. Then you can see these numbers here. This is actually meant for a combination code. So then, like it said here, if you go back into it, it says 221, a 3-digit number combination somewhere. So 221. See it? And like I said, Paula's plan, project plan. Then once you open that file up by going to 240 and opening that, then you would have, then that challenge will be given to you. Next, you go into, next you have 2 stocked, which is deleting Monica twice, doing the thing where you delete Monica before starting the game twice, which to be more clear about that is that you can delete Monica before the game starts. As you can see here, you can delete Monica before the game starts. And if you reset the game before the end of the game happens, you can still end up deleting Monica even though the game hasn't started. Now we will go over the pictures. Okay, so these first 7 are just by playing the game normally. This one is just by unlocking the side stories, which again is by picking each one of the characters during the poem games. This one is that win or any percent WR, where you had to get finish a poem in 20 seconds or less. This one is by selecting the word kawaii during the poem game, which is one of Natsuki's words, by the way. And then we have Sayori's first poem, just pick her for the first day. Pick her for the second poem. Then this is, once you do that, you'll unlock the first part of Trust, which you just have to play through to unlock the second part. And then once you finish Trust completely, you'll have both of these. Then Natsuki, pick her for the first poem, pick her for the second poem, pick her for the third poem. Then you'll get this one, which is by acquiring all 3 of the poems for Natsuki. This one is by once you pick Natsuki for any of the poems, you'll unlock the side story balance, which you'll just get by playing the side story. Then Yuri's first and second poem are by picking her, but her third poem is by picking her for the first 2 days, and then on the third day you pick like Sayori or Natsuki. Then this is by getting all 3 poems for her. This one is in Act 2, I believe. You'll get this. You'll get this normally by playing the game. And then Monica's first, second, third poem. All of Monica's poems will appear just by playing the game for the first time. And then we have this one is by getting the special ending, which Dan actually gives you a letter. This one is by getting the normal ending. This one is by getting all of Sayori's poems. This one is by getting all of Natsuki's poems. This one's by getting all of Yuri's. And this is by getting all of Monika's. This one is write a poem for Sayori, write a poem for Yuri, write a poem for Natsuki, write a poem for Sayori in both first and second poem games, write a second poem for Natsuki, write a second poem for Yuri, and choose to help Yuri during the festival preparations, and choose to help Natsuki for the festival preparations. And then whenever you get the option to reply I love you or you will always be my dearest friend, you have to reply I love you in order to get this. This one is just by getting to this point right here in the game. This one is by these ones are by completing the side stories, and then this one is by completing all of the side stories. This one is by getting random poems that will appear during the game, and they get chosen. 3 of them get chosen per game. They could even all be the same poem too. I've had that happen. It will choose 3 random poems, and it chooses them at the beginning of Act 1. So in order to get different poems, you'd have to start completely over. So you'd have to keep going until, or have to keep trying until you get every single one of these. This one is by relaunching DDLC during Act 2, and you would have to keep relaunching it until you get this. You'll know when you got it if it just initially shows a black screen with like static and laughing, and then it says N. Then it will show this screen with Monika zooming up to Monika's face. Next, this is just by unlocking the scenes in the game. These 3 are by doing the side stories. This one is for selecting Doki Doki during the poem game, which is one of Natsuki's words. This one is try both Sayori and Monika for the weekend help before choosing Natsuki or Yuri. So this one right here, if you can pick Natsuki or you can pick Monika and Sayori at the same time, and then once you do that, it will also give you the option to pick one of these 2, and then it'll give you one of these. And then you'd have to redo it again in order to get the other character, whoever you decide to choose. And this one is delete Monika's character file before starting a new game, which I'll actually show you this one. So I've restarted the game, so there's nothing that's happened yet, and I have Monika's character here. As you can see, I can delete the file, but the only reason I can delete it is because that I've got to the end of the game at least once. So then once you delete her file before starting the new game, then you go back into DDLC. Then you hit new game. Just type in, just pick something random because this game won't last that long. And as you can, if you've played this enough, you know that this is not normal. And then you go back into DDLC. And then that's how you would get that picture. So yeah, that's how you'd get that picture. Okay. Now we have this one is by getting another one of those trophies, which is write a perfect poem for Natsuki, which is write 20 out of 20 words for her. And every time I say perfect Natsuki, that's what, or perfect poem, that's what that means, is write 2020 for the character. And then we have write all 3 poems for Natsuki. This one does not have to be 2020. This one can just be mostly for her. And this one is write a perfect poem for Sayori. This one is write all 3 poems for Sayori, which again, remember, does not have to be 2020. This one is attempt to load a save file after Sayori's death, which is right after or whenever you start the game and get to a point where you can save. Then whenever you see Sayori in a certain with something that happened to her at the end of Act 1, then you need to, as soon as you start talking about seeing her, then you go into load file and then you load that save that you made earlier. And then it will fail to load the file, but it will give you this picture. Now this one is write a perfect poem for Yuri. This one is write all 3 poems for Yuri. This one is delete Monika's character file before she begins her monologues. So as soon as you get put into the room where she's staring at you and she starts talking, go ahead and exit the game and delete her. This one is just by unlocking one of the emails, which and then this one is achieve the special ending of the story, which again I will be going over in another video. This one is in Act 3, press the skip button while Monika is talking. You won't be able to do this until you get all the way to her monologues. And then the skip button will appear again, and then you have to keep pressing it until she takes it away. And in Act 1, call Sayori for help during Natsuki or Yuri's argument. So whenever Natsuki and Yuri start fighting and it gives you the help me Sayori option, then you click that. In Act 1, tell Sayori that you would still walk home with her, so if it gives you the option to say if you would walk home with Natsuki or Yuri, then you would still have to pick that you'd have to tell Sayori. Then this one is review poemwords.txt for any anomalies. And then you would have to, for the poem words txt file, I'll show you actually what the anomaly is. You go into game, poem words, and then you scroll all the way down here, and then in Yuri's words, it would be towards the middle, but it says 915.130, and obviously as you can tell 915 is not a word, so that is the anomaly. So we will continue. This one is experience Natsuki's play with me scene. This one is by getting to Natsuki's, or by choosing Natsuki in Act 2. This one is by selecting a corrupt word during the poem game in Act 2. Sometimes this will appear, and then it will just be a bunch of jumbled shapes and symbols, and then you can pick that, and then it will give you this picture. Then these three will be completed if you do the special ending, because the special ending requires you to write a poem for a different character. Actually, never mind, it does not. This does not involve that. This means that you would have to write a poem for Sayori for the first poem, then write a poem for Yuri for the second, then write a poem for Natsuki for the third, or in any type of order you want. Then we have in Act 3, listen to 15 of Monika's monologues, which would mean that you would have to get all the way to the end where Monika starts talking about random things, and then just listen to 15 of those. This one is by acquiring all special poems, which is by getting all of the secret poems that I was talking about, where you had to get, where there are 11 of them, and 3 of them randomly come up during Act 2. Then this is by going all the way through the weekend, which is right after Yuri offs herself. Then you would have to manually go through it by pressing your interact button, or you could have it set to auto and just leave it alone for a while. It does take a long time even on auto though. And then this one is by finishing all the side stories, which again, you unlock them by picking each one of the characters for the poems. And then once you finish all the side stories, including the together one, it'll give you this picture. This one is by selecting the word horror during the poem game, and you will get this by obviously playing the poem game, and it's a word for Yuri. And this one is delete Monika for the second time, which, since you'll be playing the game enough times, this should be very simple. Okay, so that was all the pictures, and the last thing I'll be going over is how to get all the music, and then on the next video we'll be explaining a bit more in detail about the special ending and the files. So we will be going over getting all 26 songs. So if you play the game normally, you'll get like maybe 14-15 songs, and then if you play the side stories, you get up to 25, which is how many total you'll have if you complete the main game and the side stories. But in order to get 26, you have to listen to Candy Hearts for a while, or at least until it decides to give it to you. Then it will randomly give you this version of Candy Hearts, but it has a Z instead of the S. Okay, so that is all that you would have to do in order to get 100%, and I'll be going over in depth about the files and the special ending. And thank you for taking the time to watch this video, and have a good day, everyone.